Greetings YouTube and welcome back to another video. So I promised I would do another one of these videos where I mess around on Google Maps. I did one of these earlier on in the year and I thought, you know what, it was long overdue. So now I decided to make another one. So the last time I did one of these I was in Liverpool, and the last time I ended the video here at Liverpool Airport. So today I decided that we shall leave here, have a little look at Speke, then we shall venture into my hometown of Widnes. So let's begin and see where the journey goes. It's bunking time. Looks like an interesting cocktail. Though saying that, I'm not a fan of cocktails whatsoever. The only cocktail that you'll see me eat is prawn cocktail flavoured crisps, because in my opinion they're the greatest. Right, we shall turn down this road called Dunlop Road, which goes into Hale Road, and that is where I want to go. Admittedly there isn't much to show here, but all the same there's a few places that are open, and when I say few, I really mean a few. Nevertheless, I will still show you them anyway. So the way we need to go is left, and we will look down Western Avenue, as that's the name of the road that I want to have a nosy at, just for a couple of seconds to see what stuff is there or lack of. So there's a chippy called Golden City. I've never tried there. Harry's Barber, or Harry Barber actually. A Go Local store, or well, Go Local Extra. Okay, so what else have we got on the right side? I doubt there's much there, but still it may be worth a look at. The marketplace, I'm not sure what that's about, but to be honest, there isn't much to show you because a lot of the shops here have shut down. By the looks of it, there used to be a few shops here, but unfortunately times haven't been so kind to them, so unfortunately they're no longer here. It doesn't help with the supermarkets and with online shopping taking over. In some ways it's a good thing, but at the same time you can't help but feel sorry for the local businesses, particularly the ones that have been around for decades. Until we get to Hale Village, unfortunately there isn't much to see around here other than a shitload of houses. A shitload of houses. And guess what? A shitload of houses. So unfortunately you're going to have to put up with a shitload of houses. Yeah, sorry for repeating myself, but I'm actually right. Anyway, the reason why I've been planning to do another one of these videos for a while is because, you know what, I've been enjoying doing the vlogs and the videos of me uploading music from the Commodore 64 and the Amiga. I miss doing something a bit random. I had a lot of fun doing this last year, the beginning of this year, sorry. I'm one of these people who will try and do anything to mix things up a little bit on the channel. I don't fancy doing videos for the sake of it. When it comes to making stuff like this, I want to have a bit of fun and try and think outside the box. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with going outside the box. Doesn't matter about views or comments or anything like that. Sometimes you just want to have a bit of fun, and that in my opinion is what YouTube should be about. Unfortunately, you get a lot of people who will take YouTube just a bit too seriously, and to be honest with you, I'm thinking to myself, if you're not enjoying it, why on earth are you still making videos? It beggars belief. I know at the end of the day it's up to the individual what they want to do with their YouTube channel. If they only want to do it solely just for making money, then that's their choice. While I'm not a fan of YouTubers who just follow trends just to make extra money and to abuse the algorithm, again, I get why they're doing it, but to be honest with you, I don't really consider them proper YouTubers, because in my honest opinion, proper YouTubers are those who put time and effort into their content without following any trends. The number of subs doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have anything between 50 subs and 1,000, you get the idea. I've seen channels that have got millions of subs, for better or for worse, and you can tell that they're not enjoying the videos that they're doing. They're just doing it for money and to abuse the algorithm. If they want to do that, fine, but for me it's not really my cup of tea. Anyway, we have just entered the village of Hale Village, the place that I was going to show you, and there's a few interesting facts about Hale Village. And one of the facts was the lead singer of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Holly Johnson, once lived here. I can't remember how long ago that was, but apparently he was a resident here. Honestly, I don't blame him for living here because there are some really nice looking houses and a couple of cottages along the way. And if you look to your left, there is an MOT place, so if you want to get your car serviced, then here you go. As you can see, there's a lovely little cottage which I think is being used as a B&B, and quite frankly the old houses look much better than the modern ones that you see today, and modern homes to me just don't have any character, as well as being overpriced. Speaking of character, have a look at this little cottage here. Well, I won't call it a little cottage, it's quite big, but you know what I mean. That is what you call character. If I had the money, I would definitely move into one of these houses. Just look at how beautiful it is. And quite honestly, I would be saying the same about all the other houses along this road. The good news is we won't be seeing any rough areas for quite a while. So at the moment we'll get to see some lovely houses and a little bit of history of the Child of Hale. If you don't know what the Child of Hale is, I will explain that in just a minute. So far I think this has been quite an interesting journey, but things will get a lot more interesting, believe me. For those who are wondering how much some of these houses cost, well, from what I've seen they're roughly between £400,000 to just over £1 million. And if I got any of those estimations wrong, then I do apologise, but they're the estimations that I got the last time I had a nosy. Anyway, we're now venturing into the village itself. We're getting a bit more further into it. Not only will I talk to you about the Child of Hale, I will also show you the lighthouse which is facing the River Mersey. And here's a bus stop for those who want to get to Liverpool or to Widnes or wherever you want to go. We also have a board telling us the history of Hale Village, as well as the Child of Hale, who I will give you a history lesson about right now. In 1578, a man called John Middleton was born, and as a kid one thing that became apparent was his height. So much so, the folklore of Hale Village believed that he had the height of 9 foot and 3 inches. He died at the age of 45 in 1623. His body was buried in a church nearby, and I will show you where that church is. There are many other stories about him, including because of his height and how tall he was, every time he had to go to bed, apparently he would have to stick his feet out the windows. If we go a bit further up the road, you will find that there is a pub named after him. Speaking of the pub, here it is. I've heard this is supposed to be a really nice pub. I've never been there myself, but from what I heard they do some pretty decent grub. Anyway, here is the church where the body of the Child of Hale was buried. So how about that for a little history lesson by me? Admittedly, when it comes to history, I'm not very clued up on it, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, there are certain things I know about, like World War I, World War II, King Henry VIII, the Battle of Hastings, stuff like that. Even though I did enjoy history in school, it wasn't really my favourite subject. However, certain things in history do interest me, and the story and the folklore of the Child of Hale is one of them. And some of it I believe in, others I don't. Make of that what you will. Like I say, everyone has their own conclusions. Like, some people believe in the Loch Ness Monster, others don't. Why I'm bringing up the Loch Ness Monster, I have no idea, but I think you know where I'm coming from. So anyway, if we keep going further down this road, I will show you the lighthouse. And of course, that is the River Mersey. So yeah, there's some two people waving. And a kid in a Liverpool shirt, nice one. So, as you can see, just in the distance, there is the lighthouse. Anyway, I will show you the Child of Hale statue. So here's the statue itself. I will show you a close-up image of it, because Google Maps unfortunately isn't doing it justice. So here we go. Now we're back to the Child of Hale pub. So now we are going to venture out of the village. However, just before we leave, there are a few shops just along this road, as well as a chapel that looks like it's been converted into a home. Here are some of the shops I mentioned. I believe there is also a pharmacy and somewhere to grab some food. So now there is another sign telling us about the Hale Village, sorry. Get me words a bit mixed up here. So anyway, we will show you a pub called the Wellington. So we'll just go a little bit further down the road so you can have a little look. So here it is on your left. Just get a bit closer so you can now have a little browse. There is another pub called the Wellington which I will show you later on. Now just before we leave the village, there are some houses on your left that to me look like beehives. Just look at them. Why do you remind me of beehives? I have no idea, but they just do. And every time I think of a beehive, I think of the episode of Thomas the Tank Engine that absolutely traumatized me as a kid. I look back and I think why it is anything but traumatizing. I know it's an innocent kid show, but the episode where James gets stung by a bee absolutely terrified the living daylights out of me. I don't know why. But what I do know is I am terrified of bees in real life. But watching that episode of Thomas the Tank surely didn't help. Why I brought it up, I have no idea, but it's just one of them things. Anyway, we have now left Hale Village. So just before we get into my hometown of Widnes, I will show you another nice view of the River Mersey. But there will be an even better viewpoint in just a minute. So anyway, I will skip a little bit of this road just to show you a nice barn conversion. Here's the barn conversion that I was on about. Looks very nice. I don't know whether it's being used as a B&B, but what I do know is I'm a fan of barn conversions. But then again, I mentioned a few minutes ago that I was a fan of cottages and old buildings in general. As I say, they have character. Today's buildings and houses, in my opinion, do not. They lack the charm and charisma like what houses do from like the Edwardian period, Victorian, Tudor. You get the picture. Now we are approaching Widnes in a specific part called Halebank, which as we speak are now entering. Well, there isn't much in Halebank. There are still a couple of places that I'm interested in showing you, and one of those is Pickering's Pasture, a place where you take your dogs for a walk and the shit. And there are some views of the River Mersey looking into Runcorn. You might see a little bit of Frodsham and Helsby in the distance. It's not a bad place, but I've been there when it's winter and my god is it bitterly cold. And that VW transporter is an eyesore in that luminous orange. Was it like the episode of Only Fools and Horses where they painted the kitchen in that luminous yellow? Which of course Del Boy painted his mother's grave in that colour. Even after watching that episode many times, it still cracks me up. Admittedly, I've probably seen Only Fools more times than I should, but there are some episodes like that one that still make me laugh. But my favourite episode, in my honest opinion, is the Chandelier one. I have watched that one so many times, and to be honest with you, it's one of them that just gets funnier each time you watch it. I know some people talk about the episode where Del leans on the bar and falls over. That episode is great, as is the one where he goes hang gliding with Rodney, but none of them in my honest opinion come close to the Chandelier episode, which is called A Touch of Glass. If you haven't seen that one, though I'm sure most of you have, but if you haven't, what on earth are you doing? Go and watch that episode. It is comedy at its absolute finest. Like there are many great moments in British comedy like Fawlty Towers. There are two episodes that I think of the most. One of them is the Waldorf salad one, absolutely hilarious. And the one where the Germans come to stay, yeah, I think you know about that one. But like I say, it's an episode that, let's just say, the Woke Brigade will not like. Getting back on track, now this is the place that I was on about. We're now in Pickford's pasture, the place where people take their dogs to do their business and to have a look at the views of the River Mersey whilst freezing your tits off in winter. Despite this, Pickford's pasture isn't too bad of a place to visit to, especially in the summer. Anyway, I will stop talking for a few moments so you can absorb in all the views. So how about that for a little bit of a view? It may not be the best view in the world, but I gotta be honest with you, it's still quite nice to look at. Now we shall progress a bit further into the journey. The reason for the jump cut is because I did a little turnaround. All I did was turn around on the road that we were already on. So anyway, we shall have a look at what Halebank has to offer or what it doesn't offer. So yeah, there's a convenience store and a fish bar, which I've been that one myself. I've been there once or twice and it's actually not too bad. And here's a Chinese restaurant called China Garden, which I've never been there myself, but the reviews read up really well. And I nearly sounded like Jonathan Ross 10 getting me W's and R's mixed up. So one thing you will notice me do is tell you the takeaway places that I recommend and which ones I wouldn't recommend if you were to visit Widnes. These are of course based off my own personal experiences with said places, and if you happen to disagree with them, then that's completely fine. The world wouldn't be a unique place if we liked all the same things, and I'm pretty sure none of us would like to be robots. All I can say is bollocks to society. Do whatever you want, don't let people tell you what you have to think, because those very few individuals are only interested in corporate opinions, and to those miserable bastards, because if you don't have a corporate opinion, you will get called every name under the sun, such as a racist and also a sexist, even if your opinions have got nothing to do with those things. I do apologise for going off on a little bit of a rant, but you need to get things off your chest because if you don't, you will feel worse for it. I know this video is me messing around with Google Maps and having a look around Widnes, but I'd like to discuss random topics as well because it makes the whole experience a bit more enjoyable, for me at least. I know some of you probably wonder why on earth I go off on these random waffles. It's because I don't want to be talking about the same things over and over again on my channel. That is why I started doing the vlogs a couple of years ago. I believe I started doing the vlogs around 2017 or 2018, I can't exactly remember. But I've been making videos before then, but the reasons why I started doing the vlogs is because I wanted some of you to get to know me a bit more, to get to know the real me, and to show you that I'm more than just a Liverpool fan and someone who plays video games. I've got other stuff outside of YouTube that I enjoy. I mean, sometimes things do get in the way and life can be quite stressful, but that's life. You've got to know the real person, unless you're a fake ass person like PewDiePie and Mr. Beast. We're not going there, we're not going to talk about these people. However, if you happen to like those two or any other YouTubers of that ilk, then that's totally fine. They're not my cup of tea, to be quite honest with you. I much prefer the smaller channels because to me they have more personality than any of those who just make YouTube for money. I know I'm repeating myself, but honestly that is exactly how I feel and nothing will ever change that. Coming up on your right is a chippy or a Chinese place called Menli. I've never tried the food there for myself, and although it looks a bit rough from the outside, the reviews for that place are apparently really good, so I may try there myself. So now we are leaving Halebank, and now we will explore other areas of Widnes. On the right there is a caravan centre, so if you want to buy a caravan and annoy people on the motorway in the summer, you can go ahead and buy one. On the left there used to be a train station here, which closed down sometime in the 1990s and then it got knocked down. I mean, it could have been in the 2000s, though I have a hunch that it was the 90s. Again, I could be wrong on the details, but such is life, we all make a few mistakes. This here used to be a petrol station, but now it's a car wash and a valet. Why it stopped being a petrol station, I have no idea. It's a shame because I'm noticing less petrol stations around where I live. Most of them arriving next to supermarkets, and the queues to get fuel are sometimes a pain in the arse. And what absolutely winds me up is people, not everyone, but there's those few individuals who will take about 10 or 15 minutes inside there buying sweets and drinks and probably stuff that they don't need. They go to the petrol stations to do their weekly shopping. For goodness sake, go to the supermarket or the local co-op. You're not wasting people's times there, and you're not leaving a queue, leaving angry people in the car waiting for you to hurry up. They need fuel just as much as you do, you selfish pricks. I'm sorry, but I'm probably not the only one who feels this way. For God's sake, a little bit of common sense and kindness can certainly go a long way. Here on the right is a gym, and after stuffing my face silly over Christmas, I think it would be more than ideal just to lose a few pounds here and there. I know it happens to the best of us. Christmas is a time where the calories don't matter. That is until you get to the end of the year and you realise, oh shit, I think I need to do a little bit better with my eating habits. And then for the rest of the year you do much better, and then comes Christmas again. It's the same cycle. I get that you don't have to stuff yourself silly over Christmas, but when you get loads of chocolates and stuff, you do pretty much have to eat it all. Because if you don't eat it, no one else will. You can give it to the neighbours, you can give it to your friends. It doesn't really matter much because you still have loads left. And quite frankly, once all the chocolate is gone, I never want to see sweets ever again. Well, I say that, and then a few weeks later you start getting a sweet tooth again. It doesn't help when you go to the supermarket, you see all the cakes and all the chocolate bars and you get all excited. However, as hard as it is, you must restrain yourself. You don't want to end up like the girl in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, as in the original one with Gene Wilder from 1971. And no, we do not talk about the remake with Johnny Depp. On the left is a Chinese place called the Noble House, and let me tell you, 9 times out of 10, their food is absolutely fantastic. The only reason why I say 9 times out of 10 because there was one time where the food wasn't up to the usual standards, but that was only just a one-off. The Millennium, on the other hand, avoid that place like the plague. It's an Indian takeaway, but their food does not taste good at all. And in fact, I know a few people have had food poisoning from there. I went there once only, and to say the food went straight in the bin is a polite way of putting it, because my goodness, it was absolutely disgusting. I wouldn't even feed it a stray animal, they'd just sniff at it and run away. Actually, they'd run away just by looking at it. If it comes across that I'm slagging that place off, honestly, I'm not. That is not my intention. But I'm going by my experience, and the reason why I tried that place was because I wanted to see if it was as bad as what everyone made it out to be. And believe me, it is. It may look nice and clean on the outside, but don't let looks deceive you. Many a times I've been to a takeaway place that looks scruffy on the outside, but their food is out of this world. That being said, your mileage may vary from mine. You may like some of these places that I'm not particularly keen on, and vice versa. What you hear from me is me giving my honest opinions, and that is all. Now if you quickly look here, there's a house that collects all kinds of chimneys, and if you're wondering why they do this, your guess is as good as mine. All I can say is they're quite the fanatic of chimneys. Anyway, if we move a bit further up the road, you will get to a point where there are some brand new houses, but before any of those were built, there used to be a pub here called the Yew Tree, and here's a little picture of what it looked like when it shut down. I can't remember when it shut down, but I think it was about 15 years ago, I can't remember. Now that we come at the end of Phillip Road, we will now go straight across to Queen's Ave because there are quite a few shops and a chippy which I highly recommend. You may be wondering and ask, how on earth do I know what all these places are? Well, the answer is simple. I've lived in Widnes my whole entire life, so it's pretty obvious that I know where quite a few of these places are, though there's probably a few areas that I'm not as familiar with. After all, they're building all kinds of developments all over the place. It's the same as every other town and city, but for the time being, we're in territory that I know too well, as this is the place where I spent most of my childhood. When I say my childhood, I mean as in this particular area of Widnes, which is called Ditton. If there's any suggestions of places you would like me to have a look at, post them here in the comments and I will have a look. It could be anywhere: Aberystwyth, Berlin, Runcorn, Valencia, you get the gist of it. However, I will not do Manchester for obvious reasons. I'm only joking. If you want me to do Manchester, then I'll do it. If you want me to suffer, that is. All joking aside, I actually don't mind a few things from Manchester, those being Manchester tart, and I don't mean that other kind of tart, so get that thought out your mind. There are other things I like from Manchester, such as the bands Oasis and, of course, the Stone Roses. I get that some people may not be a fan of their music, but to me, they're probably two of the finest bands ever. So now we go down this road, and on the right used to be a social club called Rossi's, and here's a picture of what it looked like before it shut down. The actual building still remains, but I don't know what they're going to do with it. Are they going to put a shop there or more houses? Who knows? So anyway, this is what a typical council estate looks like in Widnes. And I know what you're thinking, there's probably worse places. You're absolutely right, and believe me, you will see one that is worse than this. But that won't be for a while. As rough as this area may be, you can't help but think of all the nostalgic memories you used to have with your mates, playing football and going to their houses playing on the PS2 and Xbox or whatever console it was on. I truly miss the days of local multiplayer, and although you can still do that to a degree, even though online gaming is mostly the way to go, it is not the same as it was back in the late 90s and 2000s. I know this isn't an unusual perspective because I know a few people feel the same way. I'm honestly not the biggest lover of online multiplayer. I've done it quite a few times but have ultimately lost my temper. The last time I played FIFA online, let's just say the controller was slightly configured. I shall leave it at that. I never want to go through that experience ever again. Since that day, I've not really bothered with online gaming, or at least nowhere near as much. And because of that, I honestly believe that online gaming brings out the absolute worst in people. If we zoom in, is the place Ditton Deli, and my goodness, their food is absolutely fantastic. What they do is they do sandwiches, full English breakfast, and if you want a good bacon butty or whatever, get yourself one. You won't regret it. So after having a quick glance at the Ditton Deli, I will cut across here and I will show you a pub called the Blundell Arms. And you know what, it's not that bad of a pub actually. And I can vividly remember the last time I went there because on that day Everton beat Manchester United 4-0. And also on that very same day my team Liverpool beat Cardiff 2-0 away. So it was a good day for both me and my dad. Unfortunately, he supports the blue half of Merseyside, but what can you do? And as much as I dislike that team from Goodison Park, I'm glad they beat Manchester United because, in my opinion, Everton are the least evil. They may be loathsome, but my hatred towards Manchester United is 10 times of what Everton is. Now don't get me wrong, I have quite a few friends who support Man United, both here on YouTube and in real life, which I have no quarrels with. They absolutely detest Liverpool in the same way that I absolutely hate Man United. But despite our differences, we always have a good laugh about the football and have a bit of banter, which is what it should be about. So whenever Liverpool win, I let them know about it and watch them come up with all the excuses and say, "Oh, but Man United won the title 20 times. I'm like, so? You may have more titles than Liverpool, but did you beat us on the day? That's exactly what I thought. But saying that, sometimes I can be a little bit sour grapes, and in the past I've come up with some of the most stupidest excuses. But at the end of the day, it's just football. You win some, you lose some, and sometimes draw. Every football team goes through that. It doesn't matter if you're the best team in the world like Real Madrid, or a lower league team such as Accrington Stanley or Port Vale. Anyway, I think I shall turn right, and if you notice there is a school here. It used to be called Bankfield School, but now it's an academy, and it goes by the name of Ormiston Chadwick. Why it's called that, I have no idea. I'd like to know what they were smoking to come up with that name. Just leave it as Bankfield, or as the local folk used to call it, Banky. And to this day some still call it by its old name, including myself. We are approaching some set of traffic lights and we will be turning left in a second. But for those who don't live in Widnes, here's another local co-op, so if you want to get your stuff, you know where to go. And the pizzas are really nice, surprisingly. As usually, pizzas from supermarkets are either alright or somewhat edible, but their pizzas are really good, or at least the ones I've had from there. I know takeaway pizzas are better, but still, it's a pretty good alternative. So if you turn your attention to the right, there is another pub called the Wellington. I showed you another one previously which was in Hale Village, so I thought I'd show you where the other Wellington was that I was talking about. Anyway, for those who have never used Google Maps before and gone on the Street View mode like what I'm doing, I honestly recommend you give it a go. At first I thought, what's the big deal? But believe me, once you start going on it, looking at all random places, that's it, you can end up having a good field day. That's if you got time, that is. Because Google Maps on the Street View mode is one of the most addictive things you could possibly do. Or at least I think it is. So now if you look here, there is another pub called the Four Topped Oak. And no, we're not talking about the Four Tops, with their popular hits like Reach Out, I'll Be There, and She Was My Girl as a few examples. So people, if you like my cheesy puns and terrible jokes, you've come to the right place. And here's an example of a bad joke. I'm sure some of you have probably heard this one before, but if you've never heard it before, I will tell you anyway. What is the difference between a JCB and a giraffe? One has hydraulics and the other has high bollocks. I know there's some worse ones out there, but that is one that came to the top of my head, and quite possibly sometimes the worst jokes are possibly the best ones. So anyway, this is a pretty new area to Widnes. Well, when I say new, it's roughly around 10 or 15 years ago. And honestly, I think some were even built like 5 years ago, such as these shops and this pub called the Observatory. There is also a doctor's there, and the vets. I think my only criticism that I have is that there's no chippies here. You could use the argument that the pub does fish and chips, and yes it does, but compared to the price of what you get from a local fish bar, the prices are double. Some people are not willing to pay over 10 quid just to have some fish and chips, and honestly, not everyone has that kind of money. And I know a few of you will probably come out and say, oh yeah, but it's nothing compared to the prices of what they are in London, which are almost like 15, possibly £20. But even then, who could fathom spending all that money just to have a fish and chips for your supper? Where that roundabout was that I just passed, I could have turned right onto Upton Rocks, but I didn't feel it was worthwhile because all it is overly expensive houses for doctors, families that are somehow rich, and drug dealers, with their Focus STs, BMW M3s, and probably VW Golf R32s, or whatever expensive car they have with their drug money. And the reason why I say somehow rich is because there's a few people who get their money from, let's just say, businesses that are a little bit dodgy. I mean, there's a few genuine people who live there, but for the most part, there are some people who got their money from doing things that perhaps they shouldn't. But saying that, it's like most areas here in the UK. So if you notice, that building on the right is the sixth form college, but obviously it's not the main college here in Widnes and in the whole of Halton, which we will get to in a little while. So on your left now is the Hillcrest Hotel, which I attended a wedding due to. But instead of a buffet or a spread, it was a set meal which everyone had to have. To be polite, I will say the food was a bit below standard. So the set meal was a roast chicken dinner where the chicken was quote unquote slightly overdone. The veg itself wasn't too bad, but the gravy, oh dear, the gravy. I won't even call it gravy because it was like piss water, or as these chefs like to call it, jus. What on earth is jus? If it says gravy, you'd at least expect something with a bit of substance. I don't know, but everywhere else it's nice and thick, whether it's on a home roast dinner or when you go to Chippy when you go and get something like sausage, chips and gravy. Before we go down the next road, over here to your right is an Italian restaurant called Pesto. Previously it was a pub called the Black Horse, and I've never been there before, but the reviews from what I've seen are all really good. At some point in the near future, I won't mind trying out that restaurant because I'm quite a fan of Italian cuisine. I mean, there's a few stuff I'm not a fan of, like, I'm not really interested in pastas with like fish and stuff in. I'm mostly a fan of stuff like ham and mushroom tagliatelle, pesto pasta, and spaghetti and meatballs, to name a few examples. Now we are going down the road called Coroner's Lane, and there's some really nice looking properties around here. And also, we are now in a different part of Widnes called Farmworth. Not to be mixed up with Farmworth in Bolton, which I think is where Peter Kay comes from. Talking of Peter Kay, my younger self couldn't stand him, especially when he was doing that Is This the Way to Amarillo bollocks. I couldn't stand that song, and I still can't. And I wasn't a fan of Phoenix Night, or at least at the time. But from around 2010, I decided to give him another chance. And let me tell you, I'm so glad I did, because now I think he's one of the funniest comedians that there has ever been. But the question is he my favourite comedian of all time? I mean, he's up there, but is he as good as Lee Evans? That's the answer that I do not know, and the reasoning for saying this is because I think both are absolutely fantastic. There are other great comedians too, such as Billy Connolly and the late Bernard Manning. I know some people are not a fan of his sense of humour because, to put it mildly, it is not politically correct at all, and the woke people of today, oh my goodness, they will get themselves into a right tizzy, believe me. So anyway, looking here is the church called St. Luke's, and over here is a pub called the Ringo Bells. Surprisingly, it's another pub I've not been to. I may check it out one day. It only very recently reopened its doors after some renovation. So now we're on Farmworth Street, which has a newsagent, and a bit further down is the pub The Griffin. Little nosy down Russell Court, even though there's nothing there but a couple of flats. There is also a hair and beauty salon called Glamour, so if you want to take your missus there or your girlfriend to get her nails done, then that's the perfect place. And now on the left is the pub The Griffin that I was talking about. Again, I've never been there, but I may try there one day. Here's a local shop, McCall's. And I know Morrison's has bought them, I believe. or at the very least have bought most of them. There's also Waterfields down there, so if you want to get some nice pastries and cakes, I recommend getting them because they are out of this world. Even their sausage rolls are absolutely amazing, so much so that they're far better than Greg's. Greg's sausage rolls are not bad, they're nice, but the ones from there are so much better. But if you happen to be in the northwest of England, there are quite a few Waterfield bakeries around. There's some in Warrington, I think there's some in Wigan, but yeah, they're all over the northwest of England, or at least a good majority of it. So if you happen to be from down south or Scotland, go there, you will not be disappointed. That will be enough talk about food for the time being anyway. On your left here is Victoria Park, or as we like to call it, Vicky Park. There's surprisingly quite a few facilities there other than your swings and roundabouts. There's a cafe there, a butterfly garden, and if you look to your left a little bit there is a lake with a fountain. Unfortunately the Asbos like to cause a bit of trouble there, and a few of the bastards have shot bloody swans with their bloody crossbows or BB guns. Seriously, those people need to be shot with a BB gun themselves and see how the cunts like it. Anyway, I haven't got time to rip them a new arsehole because I'm going to give you a history lesson, something that you may not know unless you're a fan of this certain group. The famous American band Simon and Garfunkel were here in the UK, and believe it or not, this is a true fact. You know this station, that is where they wrote the song Homeward Bound. I am not joking you at all. If you don't believe me, go and Google it yourself. Even I was stunned reading it. If you haven't had a look at the story and how they wrote it, it is well worth a read for those who are a little curious. Homeward Bound was one of the most successful songs from Simon and Garfunkel, and here in the UK charts it peaked at number 9 back in 1966. So how about that for your little history lesson? And if the question of where did Simon and Garfunkel wrote Homeward Bound appeared in a pub quiz, and if you got the answer correct, then you can thank me. This will not be the only time where I'll be talking about a band, because something else happened in Widnes in the year of 1990. But we will get to that a little bit later. Just having a look at this old Mercedes-Benz. I'm not sure which model it is, I think it might be the 190E. I could be wrong on that. I will say the old school Mercedes look far nicer than the ones we have today. Nowadays they just look generic, just like any other car. I heard somewhere that some of the new modern Jaguars are built with the same chassis that's used on the Ford Mondeo. Next we will turn left onto Greenway Road. On the left here is a church. But the reason why I came down here is because on your right there are some really nice looking houses like these ones here. I know there's some on the left which in my mind aren't as nice looking. I mean they're not terrible or anything like that. It's just that I feel like the other ones have a bit more character to them. There is a house just a bit further down that actually used to be a greengrocer's, which if memory serves me is the first red house on your right. And the reasoning for this is because I used to go there when I was really young, just before it closed down and got turned into a house. I know this because my first childhood house was around here, and we will go down that road in just a second. And in fact, here is the road now on the right, which we will quickly go down. So anyway, this is the area where I lived from when I was born right up until just before I turned 9 years old in 2003. Despite having to share a room with my brother as these are 2-bedroom terraced houses, there are a lot of fond memories I have associated with here. And when I moved in 2003, I moved to an area that I previously showed you, which was Ditton. Now that we've come to the end of the road, I think we will turn left and show you one of the best chippies I've ever been to, and it's won awards. However, this isn't the one I'm showing you, because the one that I will show you is on the road on the right, which I will turn down in just a few seconds. So anyway, let's get on and show you where it is. And it's on this particular road here, now that I turn right. There's a salon here. What does it say? Let's have a read. Thank you for all of our clients for your support over the years. I wish more businesses would put things like that on their windows, as I feel it's a sign of generosity, as it can certainly go a long way. So now on your right is now a Go Local, which used to be a pub called the Major Arms. So instead of two pubs, there's only one pub there now called the Millfield, hence the name of the road it's on. So now here's the chippy I was on about, the one which has won many awards, and rightly so may I add, because anyone who lives in Widnes, and for those who don't, can all agree that the food is absolutely amazing. It is hands down one of my favourite chippies I have ever been to. But there is one I think is even greater. And you're thinking how and why? Well, I'll tell you why just a bit later on. You see these horrible looking flats on your left? There used to be a pub there called the Albert. That was until it caught fire, and because of how much damage the fire did, unfortunately it had to be knocked down, and in its place are those ugly looking flats. Now that we've established my displeasure for them flats, we will now go a bit further and go towards where all the shops are, or at least the majority of them. So the first one you will see is the supermarket Morrison's, which was opened in 1995, as well as the new Widnes market. The old market was located somewhere else, and I will show you where that is in a little bit. So where Morrison's is used to be the massive chemical plant called the Vine, and for those who may or may not know, Widnes, apart from its rugby team, was known for its chemical plants. But since the 1980s and 1990s, majority of them are now gone. Since then, Widnes is a much better polluted town. Back in the day, however, before I came into existence, because of the chemical plants and all the shit that was being polluted in the air, you could not tell the difference between a cloudy day and a sunny day. That's how bad it was. But despite its disadvantages, many residents from the town would end up working in one of the many chemical plants that were here. In fact, some people even started working in them from like the age of 14 right up until the retirement, or until the chemical plants shut down for good and got knocked down. Maybe not all of them, but at least 95%. So here's a tiny little look at the town centre, and honestly there isn't really much to show here. I mean, there's a Subway, Greggs and a couple of other shops like CEX for an example, but honestly there isn't an awful lot to see here, since most of them are now either charity shops, vape shops or places where you get Turkish shaves. There isn't much variety, so instead I will show you a couple of pictures of what Widnes used to look like in its heyday. So anyway, what did you think of those few examples that I've shown you? So now we will go a bit further and explore some other areas. Where this Tesco is just in front of you on your left, there used to be a B&Q there and a few other shops like Tops Tiles and Comet. Sadly, Comet no longer exists. There was another B&Q, but that's now the range. So now the nearest B&Qs from Widnes are either Warrington, Speke in Liverpool or St Helens. Where this KFC is, there used to be a massive co-op supermarket, which was the hypermarket. I believe it opened in the 1970s, but in the 2000s it shut its doors and got knocked down, with the rest of the old shopping centre that was called the Windmill Centre or something like that. So now in its place we have Marks and Spencer's and a few other shops. So on your left is an Asda supermarket and on the right is the police station. The old police station was built somewhere else, but a couple of years ago it was knocked down, so it moved to where it is now. Before the Asda was built, there was a school here called Sims Cross. Not to be mixed up with Sims Cross Primary School because that's still there, but the old building has since been knocked down. I believe it was knocked down in the early 2000s, and there were quite a few other shops as well that have long since gone, which I will show you some pictures and a little video in a second. And we've gone past the Sims Cross pub. We are going up Widnes Road, and yeah, there's a Domino's Pizza and Terry's Fish Bar, which has got pretty good reviews. And surprisingly, as much as I love my fish and chips, that is one place I've never been to. After what I've ate during Christmas, I'm not sure if I'll be able to eat stuff like that for a while. Anyway, this was once the main road that went through the town centre. That was until they started building extra shops in around the 1980s and 1990s. So the rest of this road a bit further up is pedestrianised. So of course there are other alternative routes. Some roads are great and others not so much. For the most part it's alright, but some days it's busier than others, particularly on the school run in the afternoon. So now I'm going to show you where the Blockbuster used to be. I used to like going there as a kid, and my goodness, me and my brother used to rent so many games on there for our PlayStation 1 and PS2, and the original Xbox to a certain extent. More so with the PlayStation 1 because we were quite late to the PS2 party. When the slim PS2 came out in around 2004, my brother got his for Christmas that year. I got mine in 2006 because a year prior I got an Xbox, as in the original Xbox. On the odd occasion we did rent a movie, but for us Blockbuster was mostly about video games. So yeah, here's a little bit of the town centre. I showed you a little bit of it before where Subway was. Even though it's all pedestrianised nowadays, and although there used to be a lot of shops, unfortunately quite a few have since shut down for all different circumstances, not just COVID. Since we already had a look at some of the shops, I decided to jump back to where we were previously, and this is where I'm going to show you an old clip of what this road used to look like. Here is a little bit of footage. So how about that for a little trip down memory lane? And what you saw there was the old Sims Cross School just before it got demolished. So anyway, we will go a little bit further down the road and show you where the old police station used to be. So we will just keep inching our way a bit forward. So here on your left is where the police station used to be, and here's a little picture of it. And in front of you is Riverside College, which used to be called Halton College, as it was and still is the main college in the whole of the Halton area, which is Widnes and Runcorn. Some people who come from places like Liverpool, St Helens, Warrington and a few other areas also attend here because this college most likely has courses that their local ones don't, or at least I think so anyway. This was also the college I attended to when I was 16. I studied a few courses there, but the main one I did was IT and graphic design. Because of my fascination of computers from a very young age is one of the reasons why I now work as a graphic designer. At times it was absolutely frustrating. Ultimately, I felt that it was well worth it, and I have the college to thank for that. I had some good times there, a few not so good ones, but I think that's like that with everyone's experience with college. There are a few tales I have about my college days, but I think I will leave that for another time. So anyway, we have come to the end of Milton Road, and on your right is the pub The Cricketer's Arms, aka Leggies. So now we are going to turn right and go up Lower House Lane and show you where the Widnes Vikings rugby stadium is, though most just call it Widnes. And they also go by the nickname of the Comets, which earlier on I established that Widnes was a well-known town for its chemical plants, hence the nickname the Comets. In the 1990s, the old ground Norton Park got knocked down, so it got redeveloped into the stadium that it now is. At one point, especially in the 1980s, Widnes used to be one of the most successful rugby league teams. The club's last major trophy came all the way back in 1989, and that was winning their third championship title by beating Wigan at Norton Park. One of the reasons for their success was because they had talented stars such as Marten and Hare, who at the time was arguably Widnes' best player. And after 1989, things unfortunately started to go wrong, and it didn't help matters when majority of the 90s, despite redeveloping the stadium, the club was struggling financially and went into administration. This of course was a very miserable time for the club, and unsurprisingly they were relegated. The club however would return to the top flight in 2002, where they finished a respectable 7th place. So at that point it looked like things were going to improve. Unfortunately that wouldn't be the case, because in 2005 the club would be relegated once again, and it would take another 7 years for them to return back to the Super League, which was mainly down to their coach Dennis Betts, who took over the club in 2010 up until 2018, where Widnes once again would be relegated to the Championship, where they currently remain. So despite not winning a major title since 1989, Widnes have a total of 3 league titles and 7 Challenge Cups. Another thing to note is that the stadium is also used for other events, and there have been a few occasions where singers have performed tours there, such as Bryan Adams and Elton John. Not only that, it is also the home stadium for the Liverpool ladies. Now that we have finished talking about the Widnes Vikings and the stadium, I want you to have a look at what is one of the roughest areas in Widnes. And this area is called the Avs, and my god is it rough. I mean, there are a few people who live there I know who are actually quite nice, but there's some absolutely scummy people around there. So if you like fights on a daily basis, having your car set on blaze, and getting a blowjob from Vicky who has no teeth, then you've come to the right place. Okay, maybe what I said is a little bit of an exaggeration, but let's be honest with you, this isn't one of the most desirable locations. However, there is one good reason for coming here, and I will show you why in just a minute. Now we'll just keep going a bit forward up Hood Road, because in a second when we get back onto Lower House Lane, I'm going to show you why it's worth coming here, because we have a very good reason. This is Paul's Chippy. And remember when I said that there is a chippy better than Mary's? That's the chippy I am talking about. In my honest opinion, it is possibly the best chippy in the whole town. I know this might be a controversial opinion because most people think that Mary's is the best. That one for me, as I mentioned before, is a very close second. But in my honest mind, Paul's just has the edge. Enough about food, because on your left is where the golf club is. I've seen plenty of golfers who will happily play out when it's absolutely freezing cold outside, when there's rain, wind and hail. I mean, that's what you call dedication. Though if I was a golfer, I would say sod that and just go home and have a nice hot cup of tea and some nice soup. So if you're wondering, this is the big video that I was talking about on the community tab. The one I did for Liverpool almost a year ago was a lot of fun, so I decided why not show people my hometown, show you some places and a little bit of history as well. I mean, there's some bits of history that I haven't included and other facts. I'm just discussing and showcasing the places that to me seem the most interesting. So, we only have a few more locations to look at, and the best way to go is by turning right down here onto Kingsway. So if we keep going down this road, we will end up back at where the college is, but we are going to go a slightly different way in just a minute. So if we just keep going down just a little bit more, that is where Sims Cross Primary School is. I showed you where the other school used to be, and we will be returning to that area, but from another direction. So anyway, here's the primary school just on your very left. So now that we are heading down towards where the college is where, remember where the old police station used to be? There was also a court there, but just like the old police station, that too was knocked down. It may have been a bit of an eyesore, but I actually miss seeing it. The weirdest thing is, there are some absolutely ugly looking buildings, yet when they get knocked down, you can't help but miss them. I mean, there's probably people who don't miss it and are probably thinking good riddance that eyesore is gone. On the left is the library, and as a kid it was one of my favourite places to go to. Not only did I borrow books, but I also remember borrowing a few VHS tapes of some of my favourite kids shows. If any of you are watching this, did you ever borrow VHS tapes from the library? If so, put it down in the comments. On your left is the church, St. Paul's. Anyway, we are now heading back to Sims Cross. And you know where the Asda is from what I showed you before. I'm showing you what it used to look like before Asda was here. Not only have I showed you some old footage, there are also a few pictures I found. So what did you think of that? Anyway, I've decided to turn back around and show you where the old Widnes market used to be. So if you just keep going down this road here, when we get there. So we'll keep going down just a bit more further, and then we shall turn left here onto Lugsdale Road, then quickly turn right onto Alford Street. And this is the road where the old market once was, until the new one was built next to Morrison's in 1995. On the right is where the market used to be, and here are a few pictures of what it looked like. Because I was born in 1994, and with the old market shutting a year later for the new one, I unfortunately have no memories with it, since I would have been just one at the time. But despite this, I hear many people talk very fondly about it, including my mum and dad. And by looking at these old photos, it's not very hard to see why. If time machines were a thing, I would jump in one immediately and experience the old market in person. Sadly, time machines don't exist, but if they did, I'd get in that bloody thing as quick as humanly possible. Now we are turning right onto Lacey Street and head towards Victoria Road. In just a few minutes we will find ourselves in Westbank, where Spike Island is. On the right here used to be the Queen's Hall, which was a popular venue place. Many different acts such as the Beatles performed at said place. Many other different acts performed there too, though I think the Beatles were probably the most successful ones to perform there. Sadly, the Queen's Hall would shut its doors in the 2000s and would get knocked down and get turned into flats, which is what it is now. Next on our journeys, we are heading towards Westbank and Spike Island. At some point there used to be a train station on this road, and you see where this bridge is? That was where it was located before it shut down and got demolished. So anyway, if you can see this flyover above us, that's the flyover to the new Runcorn Bridge. Needless to say, I am not a fan of it at all, but I am not talking about myself. I am also speaking on the behalf of most of the residents living in Halton, and also those who don't. And there are quite a few scathing reviews on it, and in fact I posted one of my own. Here it is. So as you can tell by the review, it's a toll bridge, but unlike most toll bridges where you have to pay just before you get onto it, this is one you have to pay after you've used it. But since it isn't clear to those who live outside of Halton and live in other areas of the UK, unfortunately a lot of them don't realise that it is a toll bridge until they receive a fine through the post, all because the bridge doesn't give anyone clear instructions. So if you want to have a look at the reviews of the new Runcorn Bridge, even though its actual name is the Mersey Gateway Bridge, well, because, you know, it's the River Mersey. But anyone living in this area and Liverpool call it the Runcorn Bridge because it literally takes you to Runcorn. Down here is where Spike Island is, and if anyone knows their music and their bands, that's where the Stone Roses toured on the 27th of May 1990. Despite it being badly organised, the venue was quite successful and roughly around 30,000 people attended on that day. So that was just a quick summary about the Stone Roses and the Spike Island tour in 1990. There are some documentaries about it, and even if you're not a fan of the band, I recommend checking some of them out just for curiosity. So that blue building that you just saw there a second ago, that is the Catalyst Museum, which is a science museum specifically for children. And if you have any kids of your own, or know someone who has young children and are interested in science, I recommend taking them there. I went there as a kid many years ago. I remember quite liking it on a school trip. But then again, it could be the nostalgia talking. So where this park is looking over the River Mersey is where the new Runcorn Bridge is. I've already mentioned my displeasure for it. There is one thing I forgot to mention about it. There is no hard shoulder, and if your vehicle happens to break down there, oh dear. The church that you're looking at is called St Mary's, and we're on the road with the same name. So anyway, this road looks over the River Mersey, and if we keep going forward, I will show you where the old Runcorn Bridge is. Its official name is the Silver Jubilee, which in 1961 was officially opened by our late serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. So if you look over the River Mersey is Runcorn, and will I do a Google Maps tour of Runcorn? We will see in the future. So if you look towards you is the pub the Mersey, and the name is pretty obvious as to why it's called that. It also goes by the name of the Snig, and live venues are often held there. So if you happen to be here over night time, you know where to go if you want to have some entertainment. So if you've had a good night out and have had a proper piss up, there is a chippy just along here. And talk of the devil, here it is on the left. So if you fancy a fish and chips or a Chinese, then the Golden Bridge will do you just fine. Surprisingly, it's another chippy that I've never been to myself, but from a few people who I've spoken to, they seem to highly regard it. So anyway, as soon as we leave this part of Widnes, which is West Bank, there are just a few more areas that I want to cover just before I wrap this video up. Since we've already covered this area, I think I will do a little jump cut. So anyway, if we go left is one of the roads heading towards where the old Runcorn Bridge is. And when the new bridge opened, they temporarily shut this one and made several changes by turning it from a dual carriageway to just a single. and to fit a bicycle lane. So I decided to turn around, hence the little jump cut. And guess what else they did to that bridge? You're never gonna believe it. They turned it into a toll bridge. And the worst thing about it is that it never used to be a toll bridge, and apparently this is one of a few bridges in the UK that was never a toll bridge to begin with that got turned into one. Since you already know my feelings about the new bridge, I won't repeat them for the old one because I think you get the idea. So now I think I will turn right and show you just the last few areas before I end the video. So if you managed to read that, it's pretty obvious as to why I sped up the footage. I mean, who on earth would just want to have a look at a boring dual carriageway? But as boring and as bland as the road may be, there is a reason for going down here. So on your left is the Tesco, and if you're thinking, is that the same Tesco that we went past before? Yes it is. But fear not, I won't be heading that way because we've already been down there. So instead we're just going to keep going a little bit forward and show you a few shops and restaurants around there. However, the ones on your left we won't be going down because that roundabout just there, we went round it before. And that was the way I went towards Sims Cross and Asda. This particular road right here, Watkinson Way, apparently it was open in 1997. Before this dual carriageway existed, some of the other main roads in Widnes such as Kingsway and Birchfield Road were pretty much gridlocked on a daily basis. And when they finally opened up this road, needless to say it was a relief. And although it occasionally gets busy, and there are some days that are worse than others, for the most part this road did the town a hell of a lot good. Except for on the rare occasion where it does get a little bit jam-packed. So the two restaurants that we saw, one is a Toby Carvery and the other just your typical McDonald's. There are also a few shops here like Pets at Home, a B&M and The Range. So if we just keep going in this direction, and on the right we have a few places such as a Frankie and Benny's, a Nando's, an ice rink and a cinema. There is also a Premier Inn, but I'm not here to review hotels as I am not Walk With Me Tim. However, I think his channel is worth a watch and is probably only the few big YouTube channels that I actually recommend. And what I like about Tim is he gives his honest opinions and is informative, which sadly is a rare thing among big YouTubers, and let's be honest with you, I can't stand most of them. But I will say that Tim is an exception. So if you're interested in the hotel reviews and is interested in walks, again I recommend you have a little look at his channel. I think there's something for you to enjoy. So anyway, we are not too far from the end, but there are one or two places that I will show you and then I will call it a day. And I gotta be honest with you, I've enjoyed doing this. I've been planning on doing stuff like this for the longest time possible, and although I've enjoyed doing the vlogs and other stuff on my channel, I decided that I wanted to get out my comfort zone once again and start exploring random ideas, just to mix it up a little bit on the channel. And even though I do enjoy making the vlogs and other stuff on my channel, I think that mixing it up a bit breaks up the monotony. When I made my last Google Maps video, which was almost a year ago, I mentioned that I wasn't going to relegate my channel to just vlogs, football and games, as I would find doing the same topics over and over again to be a little bit boring. So that is why I decided to go out my comfort zone and show people that there is more to my channel than just those three things. And not only that, I want to make things that I personally enjoy making, but at the same time not make videos for the sake of it. And that is one of the reasons why I don't upload every single day. In my own mind, uploading videos sporadically is more fun. So if we keep going up this road, we will go to my favourite Chinese in the whole of Widnes, which is the Golden Dragon. From the outside it may look a little bit run down, but their food is always spot on. I have never known anything to be bad from there, not once. If it's a chicken fried rice or a special omelette, it doesn't really matter. Each and every time I've been there, it is just perfection. And if it isn't the definition of food porn, then I don't know what is. So anyway, we've come to the end of Page Lane. So if you turn left, it'll take us to where the pub the Albert used to be. But since we've already been down that area, I will instead go right. So anyway, we are now in the part of Widnes called Halton View. And if we turn around, we see a little park called the Bongs. A favourite place for people to take the dogs for a walk, and apparently, I don't know whether this is true or not, but I've heard from a few individuals that this is a favourite place for people to go dogging. Whatever floats your boat, I suppose. So anyway, if we keep going up this road, there's a hairdresser's called Dolly Locks. Why it's called that, I have no idea. And then on your left is the Curry King, which at one point used to be one of the very best Indian takeaways in the whole town. But in recent times, it's gone a bit grim. And the problem with that is, not only are they using cheap ingredients, but they've also overcomplicated the menu by adding stuff that isn't Indian related, like pizzas and fish and chips, which is a massive shame. So if you keep going forward, on your left is a petrol station, and down on your right is a few shops. I think there's also an Indian takeaway place down there. And if you see these houses on the right, people in Widnes call these the Swedish houses, as they have a bit of a Scandinavian look to them. They were built sometime in either the 1960s or the 70s, and let's just say they're an acquired taste. Some people like them, but most like myself are not so keen on them. So anyway, we have come to the end of our adventure in my hometown of Widnes. And if you enjoyed this little journey, please let me know in the comments, as this has been a project that's been in the pipeline for a while. So I will mention this again, if you have any other places that you would like me to have a look at, put your requests down below. However, I will say that I won't be making another one of these for a while, since I will be making other videos on the channel, including my usual stuff. But remember, the Google Maps stuff will be back in the future. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.